Welcome back to our Breaking Down the Adoption Barrier series presented jointly by SOAR Performance Group as well as Prolific. Today we're going to be discussing when sales enablement isn't actually enabling sales and what you can do to better leverage some of your sales enablement investments. Today specifically we're going to be focusing on key opinion leaders not engaged, which is one of the core reasons that we see that innovations, new approaches aren't adopted inside of our client organizations. So before we jump in, we're going to link back to the reason that we actually have decided to share this webinar as well as speak on this topic at Dreamforce. And that's really that there's a huge increase in terms of the number of organizations with a dedicated sales enablement function, tripling from 20% to 60% over the past 4 to 5 years. With that, what we're seeing is that not only is performance not improving, but the percentage of reps making quota during that same period has actually gone down. And so that caused us to scratch our heads and wonder, why is this? And from our perspective, it's really all about adoption. And so what we're going to be talking about today is one of the reasons why new innovations, new approaches, new initiatives aren't adopted, which is that those key opinion leaders aren't engaged in the process. Quick introduction, my name is John Thaxton. I'm the Vice President of Client Engagement with SOAR Performance Group, and I work with our customers ranging from Global 1000 accounts to fast growth, venture-backed startups around how do they really drive next level performance in their sales organizations. With me also today is Bill Green, who's the Chief Revenue Officer from Prolific. Bill, before we dive in, would you like to give the group a quick snippet on your background?
Thanks, John. Bill Green at Prolific, and I'm the Chief Revenue Officer responsible for the go-to-market team. And Prolific is a Salesforce AppExchange product partner focused on sales enablement. I spent many years at Salesforce and as well as many more in B2B tech sales. And so I have been involved in many conversations with customers and partners and prospects that have done sales enablement well, who have suffered with adoption and enablement, and as well as a practitioner, had a lot of personal firsthand insights and tips and tricks. So I look forward to sharing those today.
Thanks, Bill. And with us as well as the president of our organization, Charlie Thaxton. And Charlie, before we dive in, would you mind sharing a little bit about your background with the group?
Thanks, John. So our organization works with our clients to help them drive next level performance, as John mentioned, but very much helping them drive successful sales initiatives and sales enablement initiatives to drive new levels of performance across the organization. Look forward to sharing some of those experiences with you.
So today specifically, we're going to be talking about the fourth reason that new innovations aren't adopted, which is opinion leaders not engaged. So now as we dive into this topic, what this is really all about is frequently when we see organizations that struggle with adoption, there are often those that really shape the opinion of the organization that might actually be countering or not in favor of a specific initiative. And so what we're going to talk about today is why that occurs, how that prevents adoption, and what are some of the things that you can do to help engage those opinion leaders. So Charlie, I'm going to start with you. So if you think about the topic that we started with, which is investment in sales enablement, maybe not getting the ROI that an organization might like to see, how do you see this topic of opinion leaders not being engaged contributing to that?
Thanks, John. Well, in every organization, there's the, quote, formal structure, and then there's the informal structure. And the informal structure is usually driven by opinion leaders. So who are those people that are seen as thought leaders in the organization, opinion leaders that drive movements in the organization? And so that group can be very powerful as a resource to drive a change initiative. It also can be a great resistance if those opinion leaders are not on board. So I think it's just an important thing to consider, particularly with sales enablement initiatives, is do you have those opinion leaders on board, and are they the champions for the initiative so that it becomes their initiative, not our initiative?
Thanks for sharing that, Charlie. And Bill, from a technology perspective, as you all work with clients around deploying sales enablement related technologies, how do you see this topic of opinion leaders not being engaged holding back adoption?
Well, John, thank you. I think there's really there's really two insights that I have. I will start with the first one, in particular, and this may seem very obvious, but it's not as pervasive as you thought. When you have people that are as close to the day-to-day sales motion, and it can be salespeople directly or people that grew up in the organization in sales that are very in tune with what it takes to sell and market as well. And I think that's important to understand, because marketing and sales coexist as it relates to go-to-market. When you've got the people that are very, very dialed in to what that reality looks like, and they are involved in shaping the requirements and evaluating vendors as far as what makes sense and what's going to give them the highest chance to be successful around adoption and get the results they want out of enablement, that's a good thing. And then the second side, so that's kind of item one, is get the right opinion leaders and as close to the market as you can involved in the evaluation discussion of technology and sales enablement. Point number two is I also see great vigor from one particular group, whether that's finance or IT or sales and marketing. But for sales enablement to really work, I mean, it's got to have resources and support, and particularly in the example of Prolific Crush, which is account planning. By its very nature, it implies team-based selling, and so for it to be successful and to see those results of that application in sales enablement, you've got to get the opinion of the team and that they're going to use it and they see value in that as well. So item one is get the people very close to the customer, very close to the market, and understand what it takes to win. Item two is to make sure that you've identified, who on the team really needs to have a voice in evaluating technology as it relates to sales enablement.
That's a great point, Bill. And I would say those are two things which seem intuitive, but as you described, are not as common as you might think. So Charlie, in your experience working across many sales enablement related initiatives over the years, what have you seen organizations do well or do differently when they do a good job engaging those opinion leaders?
Well, a couple things. Number one is getting them engaged early, so they're on the front end of the process, not the back end of the process. And then number two is having them help mold the approach and the solution, so that the opinion leaders are a part of that process in terms of developing the new approach, the new process. And as Bill described, whether it's when technology is a part of that, making sure that they're engaged to actually help drive some of that selection, the ideas in terms of deployment and configuration, so that it aligns with what's required for the organization and aligns with the needs of the organization.
Thanks for sharing that, Charlie. And I think that's a great build on some of the things that Bill shared. And Bill, from your perspective, as it relates specifically to technology, what do you see organizations that do a good job with this do differently?
Yeah, thanks, John. So we talked about, the component of getting people very close to the market, close to the customer, close to the competition from a sales and marketing standpoint. And we talked about, having the right and appropriate mix of opinion leaders. Let's take that to the next level. At that point, and we see this, from time to time, where people, want to get started, which is very, very exciting. But we ask them, what does success look like? And I think it's really critical, because when you have different opinion leaders, which can very often be in different functional groups, different people have different views of that. Or they say, for example, hey, we want to get started 25 individuals in this particular group, and we want to try it for a year and see how it goes. Okay, great. Well, at the 3-month checkpoint, what does success look like 6 months and 12 months? So having those success criteria, now I'm talking specifically about technology, but obviously it's tied to business results, which is exactly why we're co-presenting this, because it's a three-legged stool to really get the most business results. So in summary, it's those people that have an eye on what does good look like, what does success look like, not just from a technology standpoint, but a business results perspective.
That's a great point, Bill. And I think one of the gotchas that you brought up there is that just engaging the different opinion leaders in and of itself is not sufficient. You have to also shape them and shape consensus with them around what does success look like and drive alignment in the organization around that. So it's not just about engaging the people, but engaging them in the right way so that you come up with a common blueprint around how do we really make this work in our organization? Secondly, how do we make sure we get a strong result out of doing this? And then thirdly, how do we connect not just the technology, but also the people, process, and strategy around it? So as we move forward in our next installment, we're going to share a little bit around the last reason that new innovations aren't adopted, which is focus on the innovation versus focus on the client. And then finally, if you're looking to get a jumpstart on increasing adoption now, two things you can do. One is if you want to have a listen to some of the other pieces of this series, we'll give you some other great ideas, tips, and tricks that you can take and use to leverage to make a difference for yourself. You can also reach out to our organization, SOAR Performance Group, for a free 30-minute leading practices briefing on sales enablement. You can find us at soarperformancegroup.com/contact us. And then likewise, if you're interested in getting more involved with Prolific, Bill, would you like to share a little bit about how our audience can do that?
You bet. So you can find us at prolific.com or on the Salesforce App Exchange, and we invite you to get your eyeballs and your fingertips trying out Prolific Crush, which is native account planning, or Prolific Ace, which is digital content enablement.
Bill and Charlie, thanks so much for sharing some of those experiences and perspectives with the group. We're looking forward to our next and final installment. And thank you very much to our audience for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.